In 1959, Manly P. Hall gave a rare and infamous lecture solely on a book called Etidorhpa, a book that reads as a fiction, because going under that category was the only way these types could get published and see the light of day. Confidently written in is a conversation between a pale and surprisingly wet amphibious humanoid and a character we will later come to know. The persistent phantom asks him, "Can you not see that food is not matter? The material part of bread is carbon, water, gas, and earth. Give a man a diet of these things and say to him, bread contains no other substance. Here is the material food of man. Live on it. But if the man eats these, he'll die with his stomach distended. Thus, matter is not food, but a carrier of food called sunshine. The grain of wheat is a food by virtue of the sunshine fixed within it. The flesh of animals are simply carriers of sunshine energy. Break out the sunshine and you destroy the food, although the material remains. The growing plant locks the sunshine in its cells, and the living animal takes it out. It is after the sunshine is liberated during the metamorphosis of the tissues of an animal that it becomes food. The material part remains and becomes a poison that, if not properly eliminated from the animal, will of course destroy the life from within." Our brassly educated phantom goes on to explain that the ancient peoples, who we find to be barbaric for venerating the sun as a so-called god, knew this about food quite well. And if we look at their impossible architecture and ways of agriculture, it seems that they were just much closer to source. In this case, literally. Etidorhpa, despite being apocryphal, quickly spread under the table throughout the scientific community, causing dozens of known authoritative figures of science to write letters urging the author to detail how he had knowledge of particular certainties of physics that at the time, and probably still today, were far too abstract for a common person's understanding, let alone be presented so accurately with all work shown. In response, the author stuck to his word that the codex was simply dictated to him by a mysterious fellow with a beautiful five-head, a fellow that oddly just carried the name The Man Who Did It, and his story holds water to this day despite being unbelievable. With its expositions of scientific anomalies, this truly cryptic text also doubles as a historical manuscript, showcasing a knowledge of alchemy widely unknown at the time. So, before the only named man who did it gave dictations of his account of a journey within an unreal yet impossibly real subterranean reality, he quickly briefed the listening writer on the alchemist's letter. "To the adept who dares Zoroaster's cave to discover the philosopher's intellectual echoes, by means of which they communicated to one another from their caves. I say, be warned, many of them lived for the good of the world only, toiling over their crucibles, uttering no voice outwardly. They would study the earthly bodies and its dance with the celestial. The objective was to find the stone. Roger Bacon told us of facts concerning the sciences that scientific men could not fully comprehend. He believed the Philosopher's Stone to be the secret of indefinite prolongation, and that futures could be predicted by means of a mirror." Worth noting here is that Bacon actually conceptualized the vehicle independent of horses, declaring that the ancients had done this and the art might be revived. The man who did it went on speaking. "Read the story backward. See that in alchemy we behold the beginning of all sciences, for it is the cradle, and as the progeny of mystics, the infant sciences struggled through the dark ages in care of the once persecuted and now traduced alchemist that spawned a legacy still alight today. They could not live to see the future they had eagerly hoped for, but they started a future for mankind that will far exceed in sweetness and and light. They spoke of a red elixir that the barbarous world about them helped shed. The blood that shed was of purity, the blood of saints, the blood of a savior, and they dreamt of a white elixir that is yet to bless mankind and bring a period of divine peaceful light. They told both jeweler and thief that even pure gold paled in comparison to the refinement of subtle spirit. There is a richer field awaiting men who can interpret the tablet. This Kabbalistic wisdom is not recorded in books or in manuscripts, but has been purposefully preserved in the unreadable minds of uncrackable men. Learn of their secrets and cast their treasures only before those who can see them. A pause reverberates as the writer's guest of such bountiful forehead real estate ceases to speak. He stroked his pale white beard and, after casting an inquiring glance onto the author, he asked, "Shall I read on?" "Yes," said the author, and the man who did it proceeded to deliver his confession. When we hear the words of brilliant men who walk to the beat of their own self-made authority, one can practically see the ears of a room perk up to catch what it can. Hyper-capable, they demonstrate their philosophies like a mathematician shows his work, by means of simply radiating authentic gnosis from their core. There is no need to wear a badge to lay riz on the quantifiability of the results, because in the case of alchemy, they are the results. So when we read the words of such a man like Roger Bacon, insisting that the future can be predicted with a mirror, we know that the ink and paper sentences won't be bringing us closer to any kind of inner light on its own, making us like the dog that stares at his master's finger in lieu of following its path to the ball that has been thrown just beyond our conceptual gaze. It is up to us to catch the hint. The alchemists knew this just as well as we know that a mirror is not literally a future predicting divination tool. But if we follow the so-called open way that the finger is pointing to, we might see that the mirror not only reflects the present observer, but simultaneously shows us the quantum potential outcomes of our entire universe. Not just the fate of the alchemist peering into it, but the destiny of the first alchemists to ever transmute primal material into gold. Titanic entities currently attempting to tell us the secrets of their craft. Alchemists that we call sons. About 500 years BC, philosophers like Democritus and Zeno attempted to explain quantum behavior without scientific terms by saying a watched atom can never decay. Metaphors teaching this are still used to simplify the subject today. Metaphors like you can never step in the same river twice and a watched pot never boils. But let's not believe anything that those guys say until we see what university that they got their degrees from. Spoiler alert, probably the School of Trippin' Balls. When trying to wrap his mind around the double-slit experiment and entanglement, Stephen Hawking, a renowned atheist, came to the startling revelation that if these photons know what's going on in the room of the laboratory, then, oh my God, they must also know of the entire universe. Because that's just how entanglement works, and clears up quite a bit about how the ancient Zen masters so well understood the intricate order of reality, and how the long-forgotten builders of ancient megaliths understood impossible details about stars. But pyramids aren't the only thing these ancient people of the higher yugas had in common. They venerated the sun as a living being. Personifications like Ra and Horus, Shemesh, Helios, an Aztec one that I won't try to pronounce, Sol, Arena, and debatably the famous Mithras that came super close to being the world's most prominent religious character before before Christ showed up and went all Highlander on the world. There are so many personifications of the sun in ancient cultures that it is no wonder why the term light is so heavily used in the esoteric world. It is used very loosely. Love is light. We are starseeds. Man is a creature of light, a human, so to speak, etc. But what does this all mean? Well, just like your parents' divorce had a mediator between your alcoholic dad and your obviously always innocent mom, ancient people had scribes between this gross physical realm and the subtle causal realm, hyperbolically said to be the above. And one of the scribes was Jehuti, later changed to Thoth, pronounced Thoth if you're feeling kind of arrogant, and then later was adopted as Hermes. But what are we told by these scribes that the above worlds have to tell us? Well, a lot of it has to do with suns, and not just our own. It is said simply that we are that. And we have to remember that the original bars Hermes T was spitting wasn't the now famous "that which is above is like that which is below." It reads something far more staggering. That which is below is from that which is above. That much is kind of obvious, considering that we are made of star stuff and the Fibonacci sequence is our blueprints too. But then it reads the second part. That which is above is from that which is below. And let's just stop right there. Is Trisman really telling us that we give birth to the causal realms as much as it gives birth to us? How can that be? After all, I thought everything was cause and effect according to his same 7 laws, the Hermetic principles. Does this indicate that an observer is both the cause and effect of reality? Let's keep this in mind for later. Let's remember what Democritus, whose name I'll pronounce however I want, Zeno, and Stephen Atheist Hawking, and the double slit experiment has shown us, that no matter how large the cosmos is, it doesn't exist as tangible to modern science until it is experienced, or as Zeno would say, seen. All of a sudden, you might feel very important, as well you should, because the entire universe is only as good a thing as you are a person. Don't let the universe down, Sean. Eyeballs can see because of photons, and it is the most important thing to our being able to perceive the world. Yet they are long from being understood. Like, where do they come from? Were they ever even born? You know, molecules come from atoms. Atoms come from particles, i.e. protons and neutrons, and those come from these electrons. But the buck stops here. Where did those birth from? I mean, we can barely understand how plasma gives birth to itself without a mother, but electrons, they just existed already. They don't need baby food and never needed a womb. Yet, according to Etidorhpa, it is the very thing we consume as food for us to exist. Astonishingly, they need us to exist as well. And their food is our sentience. That is our awareness of them. There has to be a living vessel for this messenger angle or angel of light to have a purpose. As Zeno, again with another zinger, said, light never enters a cavity. The more we think about what suns are, the weirder and weirder the concept becomes. Gazing at the stars could have a person enthralled in speculation for an entire night, as Gianardo Bruno found out when he was on a rooftop, on drugs, and on to the possibly greatest realization that any man has ever had, that the stars were suns, hosting entire worlds of their own. Before this, I assumed that people thought the stars were air holes poked through the lid of our jar that we're in, because we're bugs. Then, of course, he went on to realize another fact, that if you talk too much about your trip report, the authorities are fitting to fetch you up. But suns are indeed very trippy. Think about what is supposedly happening here. If a substance is met with unimaginable heat and an unfathomable amount of pressure, it stops entertaining the laws of physics and becomes no longer that substance at all. Not to be confused with a change, by the way. It is now completely and permanently a different thing altogether, literally the difference between lead and gold. Thus, a transmutation of matter takes place. If we refer to our go-to and widely misunderstood axiom, as above, so below, and attempt to understand it enough to apply its invaluable worth, we should be greatly inspired to know that if suns can do it, so can we. Enter spiritual alchemy, the cornerstone of the Hermetic teachings.
The alchemical transmutation process requires 7 major steps. This is psychology for the soul. Thoth left us instructions in the emerald tablets of how to transmute lead into gold, or lower, shittier you into higher consciousness, more open awareness. Lead is you when you begin with just no home training, and then you work your way through the steps up to gold, which is, enlightened you. Calcination, which is the lightning struck tower, is your first step. It's fire trial. It sucks. It's that divorce that breaks you, or whatever shoves you into dark night of the soul. That's calcination. You can thank yourself for that. Dissolution comes after that. That's the water trial. Feel everything. Get in touch with your emotions. Gain some emotional intelligence. Separation is the 3rd step in the alchemical transmutation process. This is just where you cut out the fat, the shit that doesn't serve you anymore. And then conjunction is when you put your life back together without the pieces that you just got rid of in separation. It sucks a lot, and you don't really know when you're in and out of it, but it's important. Fermentation is next. After conjunction, you have to ferment. So, see the world with your new eyes and your new sense of wonder and your new consciousness level. And then distillation is when you refine your knowledge, and it's like consilience of knowledge, where you just put together the pieces of the puzzle from all over the world, and it all starts to make sense. And then coagulation is the last step, and that's when you become something transcendent from where you began, a whole other octave. And that's alchemical transmutation by the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean.
Man does not and will not believe in what is outside of his own imagination. You've seen it before on 100 faces of utter persona and in twice as many fluoridated eyes. Basically, if we can't imagine something, we disregard it. To this logic, if a bug can't comprehend the concept of a toaster, then those two are not real. We have had this discussion before concerning chakras. It is correct that they are the center of that gut intuition of our Manipura chakra, the urge to talk trash coming from your Vishuddha chakra, and the ideas received by our Sahasrara chakra, my apologies for the pronunciation, or the feeling that you got in your sacral chakra the first time that you saw Jessica Alba scuba diving into the blue and had your mom mark the wall where you grew 3 inches that day. These chakras are something we experience and thus are real, despite not being able to go in and surgically find one any more than we can surgically find a dream. A dream where you are scuba diving with Jessica Alba and have to rush to shore because you got stung on the face by a jellyfish. Does everyone get it? Who's gonna get it? Okay, moving on. A chakra we didn't mention is called the Anahata by our Eastern ancestress siblings. It is your heart center, right where the heart is. And a side note, Mandela effect alert, your heart is no longer on the left. It's in the middle now, and apparently always has been. Google it, I don't know. The symbol of the heart center is emerald green, but Why green? Well, nothing passed down to us from our ancients of the higher Yuga was an accident. Like the geometry of the Great Pyramid, these colors have a story to tell. We've been chatting about photons, so let's roll with light for now. On the visible light spectrum of colors, we have green, dead center, because any which way you turn the tables, green is in the middle. It so happens that our heart marks the center of our physical bodies, or if we revisit Egyptian cosmology, Nuit and the Duat, the above and below worlds, what the Western world came to call heaven and hell. We are that green center of light, and depending on how we alchemize that light, we can move up or down among these worlds. If our alchemy is like that of the sun, we might also completely and permanently change the substance of our own light and roam freely throughout the above and below realms according to our will. Because when the light is gold, so to speak, you can be trusted to trespass in regions where so-called lead is too heavy to go. This motion is exactly what Thoth, Hermes, Jehuti was known for. But through his many travels, he brought us messages from these unseen realms, as a master scribesman is meant to do. And when he brought his wisdom to our middle world of green, it was literally written on the very same color, the emerald tablets. Tablets that were said to be imperishable and unbreakable. But wait a second, emerald is stone. That's a tangible thing we can hold, whereas the color green and its corresponding chakra is not. Knowing that the ancients described concepts through parable, this would indicate that emerald, like any stone, was meant to represent permanence, something that lasts ages of turmoil, like the great megaliths, but also us. In other words, the emerald tablets can't be held in your hand, but we are certainly holding them close because we are the carriers of the tablets ourselves. Just by existing and being alive to have an experience, any experience, we are unavoidably making constant communion with the emerald tablet, our heart. The same human hearts that are subject to electromagnetic frequencies from the sun. The same hearts that need to eat the sun for green nourishment. And the same hearts that can't feel happy without being bathed in the radiance of the being that our ancients revered, the loyal and local sun. And if the sun has this much effect on us, its children, considering entanglement, imagine the weight of all the stars in the zodiacal sky. What is it about tri and binary star systems, by the way? If you've been keeping up with the show, it's obvious that all these subjects are just as entangled as we are with the suns. And look what keeps popping up when it comes to stars in science and myth. We have seen that the Dogon peoples have for thousands of years impossibly known that Sirius was a binary star system. Like the Egyptians that begot them, the Dogons say that the Sirius system is the other side, a perfect world of fluid where the human soul goes after death. And we saw just a fortnight ago that Cygnus is a binary star system that every so often showers the Earth in electromagnetic radiance, affecting Earth's frequency and introducing real genomic change to its living creatures, especially when the planet is at the peak of its Yuga cycle. And of course, a while back, we also talked about Robert Temple's proposition to his readers to consider the existence of what he called the Anubis cell, a term that he coined to describe the very real possibility of our own sun also being a binary star system with a twin of its own. And he wasn't referring to Sitchin's Nibiru, by the way. And he made that perfectly clear. The Kordylewski clouds, although not stars, are also huge and binary So to reel it in, what all of these have in common is clear. The possibility of sentient life in one way or another. Sirius is said to have aquatic alien life, the Nomos. Cygnus pumps out DNA upgrades on the reg. Our system obviously supports both. And the Cordy clouds are, at this point, almost certainly aware of us, as shown by Temple. So what is it about binary things that just scream life? Oh, hell, even the new pictorials of electrons shown to be alive and aware in thousands of lab studies are over here looking like a damn yin and yang. Or yin and yang if you feel fancy today, you weirdo. So, rolling with that notion, can we bring binaries of all sorts into one singular alchemical stone? Well, I say let's honor Grandpa CJ by pondering what happens when we unify these opposites. He is quoted as saying, "If a union takes place between opposites like spirit and matter, conscious and unconscious, light and dark, it will happen in a third thing, which represents not a compromise, but something new," unquote. But again, let's keep that nugget in mind for when we light up the ending of this video coming up. We have been led to believe that our ancients thought that the sun demanded worship and venerated the star from a place of fear. Despite what we learned in Plasma Apocalypse, I just feel like this isn't the case. The sun, by all means, earns our venerable respect. It gives constantly without expecting anything in return. Well, maybe the occasional virgin sacrifice if you want good crops. But hey, our buddy JC came through and, cleared all that up. The sun is an independent creature. The earth needs it. Everything on Earth needs it. Giant titans like Saturn need the sun to exist. Even the light of the moon, as metaphored in alchemical lore, is just a reflection of sunlight. So we all need it dearly, yet it's fine on its own. And yet still, it gives fruit without keeping score. In this way, as conceptualized by Uncle Carl, our local star is a perfect fit for emulation. We can adopt and embrace its ways into our own character, making it no surprise that there is another sun, S-O-N, as mentioned above, that is also worthy of emulation. This sun was a Nazarene, and whether or not you believe he literally walked the earth with us and took up our slack by way of sacrifice, or you believe that he is a notion gathered up by parallel teachers in combination with the sun's geometry, is entirely up to you. You get to pick. Either way we see it, we can still read his story and learn about ourselves. This is how mythology works. It is what makes mythology both metaphorical and literal. And if it's both at once, then we get to stop fighting over who is right, because it's probably nobody. And on that note about choosing sides, there is something that needs to be addressed. In the esoteric community, I have seen a lot of heinous fighting over the shape of the earth. This is a very bad omen, and I'll explain why. First off, we are on the same side. Our side, obviously, being that we both know that we have been lied to. And the mainstream narratives of everything are false, and possibly not by accident, but set up that way against us, the general public. So why then on Earth do I see round people looking down on the flats? Why do I see the flats being so rude and sometimes verbally violent to the round people? I'll be frank. If you dismiss, bash, or discriminate anyone on the other side of your argument, that makes you exactly the same as the rock star scientists who are picking on abductees, the same as orthodox religious churchgoers who say that you're going to hell if you don't think exactly like they do, which is impossible. And thus, the divide divide and conquer facade continues to work on us. So I'm asking, please, next time you see a comment or a video that is helping newcomers to the esoteric, as we are indeed bereft of company here, please don't scare them away with verbal attacks about the shape. Let's walk together knowing that we have been misled. We need each other to seek greater truths. All right? Okay. Side note, rant over. If our goal here on the green of Earth is to turn lead into gold, thus emulating the physically literal alchemical transmutations performed by the sun, where do we even start? Well, if you ask me, and this is my channel, then I would like to once again tie modern science to mythology to get the full scope before acting. Mythology often compares suns, S-U-N, to the sun, as in savior figures or great sages. These figures are often seen as a particular process in the body known as Kundalini. We have also seen that multitudes of world myths speak of a heavily populated inner earth that has a great central sun within it. In fact, that is the very key theme to our book Etidorhpa. Whether or not these are literal statements or allegory, again, we can put to the side as details that distract us from our goal. So when we read about a sun, S-O-N, being a man inhabited by God, and strange lore about a subterranean central S-U-N sun, we should be asking the question, do we, as below, also have a great central sun within us? Because a central sun might be the key in guiding us while here on the green level, or earth plane, if you must, and hear me say without hitting the comments like a wrecking ball. If there is a central sun within man, surely it has been mentioned as important by all ancient traditions and swiftly cast aside by modern society. Well, this is where science steps in to fill in the gaps. Here's a little riddle for you. What does the Vatican have in common with the ancient alchemists that they persecuted? And what does science have in common with an endless list of occult philosophers? What do all cultures on Earth timelessly agree on? Well, the answer is the importance of the pineal gland in the center of your head. Your pineal gland can see in both directions, within and without. The photoreceptor built in can see the radiant energy gifted from the sun and feeds on it. When it eats the sun, it passes the goods onto you in the form of serotonin and cortisol, the good cortisol. When it stops eating the sun, it gives us melatonin, the same stuff you give your 7-year-old when trying to get the guy that you brought home from the Dimmu Borgir concert to watch Netflix with you. I talk shit, but I eat like 5 melatonin before bed sometimes. Reptiles today, like very, very ancient primordial man, once upon a time, have an actual optic lens, an eye, quite literally. It is also tethered to what is called a parietal eye that stems up from the pea gland to the top of the reptile's crown. It can see changes in the environment that an average eye cannot. This is interesting because that makes at least 2 ways that eyes are a face for sentience. Let's think about that. The all-seeing eye petroglyph was one of the earliest and most abundant. If we look at art by Alex Gray, we see that there are eyes on many surfaces of things that are alive but disembodied. When we make blast off with the help of DMT, the beings are often only eyes clumped together or dancing around and eyeballing you up and down. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. Why do these etheric beings appear to us as eyes? I think the reason for this is simple. The I, as understood by human beings, is the perfect way for a formless or disembodied being to illustrate to a physical human person that it is conscious and aware. So they appear to us as eyes. If they were to show up as an ear or even a living brain, we would only see body parts and not make the connection that this entity is alive and communicating with us. So they choose the eye symbol to let us know. And make no mistake, it is a symbol that they are using. You'll notice that it's never the full eyeball that they appear to us as, but instead the vesica piscis shape that we are familiar with, thus a living symbol and not a body part or a physical attribute of the creature attempting to say hello. Merely speculation, could be, but the sun and the pineal gland are entangled in a dance, making it that much more interesting that certain acoustic vibrations, holistic breathing patterns, yogi practices, and various other activities cause the pineal gland to release DMT into the bloodstream, creating a shortcut to the other side. Because the pineal eye function also sees inwardly, thus outwardly. If that makes sense. If you know, you know. Just one of the activities that helps regulate all of the above pineal functions is sun gazing. Humans have always loved sunsets when we get a chance to sit and eat the sun with our eyeballs directly. Of course, a disclaimer, at an indirect angle, okay? We don't need Sean getting me in trouble. Blind ass. Basically, your pineal likes the sun as much as your dog likes peanut butter, but too much is no bueno. The sun seems to also reduce the inevitable enemy of your pineal, calcification. It is no pseudo theory that the pineal gland will develop what are called calcium spots that weaken its ability to do what it does. And unfortunately, the number one cause of pineal calcification is aging. And it's no wonder that children are so much closer to source and have such vivid imaginations, and then grow up to be grumpy 9-to-5ers that attempt to start YouTube channels. The whole rest of the brain is protected from calcium by the blood-brain barrier. But ironically, considering its location at the center, the pineal gland is protected by cerebrospinal fluid, a liquid that is delicate enough to safely handle the little pine guy. But this cerebrospinal fluid is affected by the content that we put in our body, thus is subject to poisonous neurotoxins like aluminum and fluoride, both of which are neurotoxins, and that's no conspiracy. So man, it's a good thing that both of those are so rare to us, right? You know, they don't occur to us in abundant amounts naturally. The sun and earth wouldn't set us up like that, thank God. The only way we would even be able to get a quantifiably suspicious amount of those substances into our systems is if we were to, spray it directly onto ourselves in a half-baked effort to block out the sun's heat. Or like even more ridiculous things that would never happen, like dumping it into the public water supply as a solution to regulate the damage that nuclear runoffs have on the environment that can't handle the poisonous waste any more than we hypothetically could. You know? I'm just so glad that doing those things would be such an enormous effort that it would never plausibly happen. I mean, what a ridiculous concept to even hypothesize. I mean, it would make a great dystopian science fiction movie, but again, would never be a real, living nightmare reality. We got more sense than that, obviously. What was I talking about? I don't know, but that brings us to today's sponsor, fresh tap water poured for you personally by David Gunn himself from the kind people at Flint. Speaking of the worst thing that can happen to the pea gland, perhaps we are reminded of burning off the dross, an alchemical process called calcination, a fire hot enough to eviscerate the fluid within, symbolized as the breath of a dragon that drinks the water, was called just that. It pressures and pulverizes the substance to drive off volatile compounds. The water, metaphorically taking the place of libido-driven emotion, is not suppressed but completely exorcised from the substance or character. But now it is completely reduced to ashes, an empty cup, we might say. And a cup, of course, is only useful due to its emptiness. Just like our pineal gland ages, the alchemist knows that getting older meant drifting from source. Dennis Hawk, he wrote The Emerald Tablet, which is a very cliche name, sure, but the book is also called Alchemy for Personal Transformation. Is wonderful, by the way. But he makes it clear in the book that the more adulterated we become, the less psychic energy we have available. So the reduction process of calcination, or calcification if you will, is of great importance as an early catalyst, catapulting the materia a bit closer to the pea stone. But what is most known about this first step in self-transformation is also the unfortunate part. It hurts. It hurts so much that you die. That is to say, the old you dies, leaving room for a new you to open up shop. The heat, the pressure, the pulverizing to ashes, these things that we go through in the barbarous world of blood creation reduces and sometimes obliterates who the hell we think we are. Now that is real ego death the hard way. And the alchemist is grateful to be tempered in it, because then the isolated solitude that follows pales in comparison, making the alchemical laboratory, like the eye that formless beings dress with, a perfect symbol to universally represent the place in which we choose to tend our work alone. It is your home library, the yoga mat, a shrine to the religious, the bathtub of a tired mom, the tree stand in the woods for the hunter, the track and field of runners, a studio for a musician, the blacklight room of the trip enthusiast, the study room of scholars, the car that you sit in for 8 minutes before walking inside. You may be thinking of your own alchemical lab, because when you isolate from the world and embrace that cerebral hygiene, propagating the creative power that we are imbued with while untainted by the world's company, you are an alchemist of modern time. But first we have to burn to ashes. Otherwise, our ignorance and the drifting of regressed desire will stand between us and the stone that is waiting for you to get the tools out. This can be seen performed perfectly by the celestial titanic entities that we call suns. Heat, friction, and pressure. The violent origins and visceral churning of primordial matter is what a sun must go through first before it can produce literal gold. Once it is capable of transforming the chaos of original matter, the Prima Materia, into precious metals, then and only then is it capable of inviting company, that is, planets, to live safely in its orbit. If the sun maintains utmost righteousness and is a shepherd to its own outbursts of toxic gas, solar flares, and dangerous UV rays, then its company, the planets, will be happy to bear it children, taking on the role of a mother, to grow within its womb offspring that replicates its image, making the sun our celestial father, and thus making the ancient people who said so kinda right all along. And a side note, it should be made clear that I don't think the ancients actually believed the sun was God, like schools will have you saying as a correct answer just to pass an exam, creating the illusion of it being fact. But Egyptians, Sumerians, Hindus, the Dogon, and many others are examples of misunderstood advancement that today's Christians will trash on, claiming multiple gods and false idols, that today's scientists will call barbarians, claiming that they imagined gods because they were a bunch of primitive cavemen or superstitious. You don't have to look very hard to see that the personified figures representing forces of nature like suns and entropy were not called gods. In fact, each of those cultures all had a main one and only god that was usually nameless and faceless, that was forever before the above mentioned deified figures. Egypt had Ra, that personified the sun, along with many others called the Neter that we are familiar with today. But above all of those was Amen, a single, unborn, one and only source of all things. Hindus have Shiva, that personifies entropy, the force of nature that is destructive in order to create new life, like a forest fire that burns death to wildlife and is utterly necessary for the land to become renewed and fertile to thrive once again. But again, above all of these Hindu figures that we think are called gods, they have a Brahma, a single unborn source. You pick your favorite culture and mythology and look at all of their gods, and you'll see that there is a main one and only God above all of them. And the ones that we are calling gods are not even deified figures, but basically personifications in order to teach and illustrate forces of nature or parts of the psyche, sometimes both. So the sun was rightfully seen as a father as Earth is a mother. But this doesn't make them false idols. This was just their scientific terminology. And I ask, which is easier to teach? Ways of teaching these things are just as subjective as the truth behind the teaching, leaving open a vast opportunity to turn teaching into a form of art. This is the spirit of our book mentioned in the intro, Etidorhpa. Whether it is literal or allegory, don't know, don't care. Studying a teaching like this to find out what kind of real it is will have an entire society missing the open way that the fingers are pointing to. Our stoic character from the intro, appropriately named The Man Who Did It, illustrates the alchemist's long, arduous journey of self-sacrifice and complete transformation of being that it takes to find the central sun within. At first, he resisted these toils in a futile effort to maintain his comfort and identity, and so inner earth Agartha ate him alive as reality became more and more fricative in response to his egoic desire. Letting go of the green earth realm as a foot foundation is what led to his becoming weightless, his capacity to wisdom instead of just knowledge, and most importantly, to find light, not by searching the world outside, but by going within, no matter how dark the caves get. It should be pointed out that the tablets we are referring to today are attributable to Hermes Trismegistus, a Greek version of Jehuti or Thoth. Because if the OG tablets did physically exist in ancient Egypt, which I don't doubt, then they are currently lost and possibly in the unworthy hands of rich, greedy museum collectors. And we can only hope that the legends are correct in saying that they are still currently safeguarded beneath the left paw of the Sphinx, After all, sonar shows that there is a chamber in that exact spot. And Edgar Cayce, who remote viewed the same chamber generations before we even had the sonar tech, was not one to smudge details. Many of the people who see the title of this episode will comment like they did on our video, Thoth of Agartha. They will deliver a frank message that the Emerald Tablets of Thoth are clear forgeries, faked for social prowess and monetary gain. And those particular kind of comments are just as important as they are true. It is indeed so that what many refer to as the original emerald stone tablets of Egypt were found in one incident and in another story channeled to us from Thoth himself, both of which cases turning out to be flops. But comments that bring these unfortunate frauds to light truly do help us in a well-rounded way. And we should be grateful to these brass personalities who just don't buy it. If this heavy scrutiny over the real tablets didn't occur, how many more Billies would we have running around the esoteric community selling the idea that Thoth was both an alien and also Jesus Christ? If it wasn't for the hard noses waxing starkly in the comments with the personality of sandpaper, we would be flooded with more Davids trying to tell us that he is the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. Leave Edgar alone, man. His forehead ain't that big. But you might be the reincarnation of another fella I can think of, though. Yeah. That's you. Okay, sorry. I just don't like it when people use the esoteric to money scam believers. But we need the skeptics to keep their head on a swivel out here, to call the bullshit when they see it. Their spidey senses combined with the intuition of spiritual believers is how we find objective truths, or at least bring us closer. None of that changes the concepts expressed though, because the real truth, being like ideas, are subjective and not tangible. The tangible world, as symbolized by the alchemical moon, is temporary and fleeting. It comes and it goes. The non-tangible causal world, however, as symbolized by the alchemical sun, is permanent and unchanging. This eternal, unchanging force is the permanent emerald stone within us. When the moon wanes and the body dies, the sun continues glowing, unbothered. Thus, the radiance within us continues without the jumpsuit that we are wearing. You can put a bullet through a TV and it will perish, but the radio signal that provides the images carries on without it. Whether seeing the world from the eyes of science or mythology, both agree that we are all children of the sun, and we are born of that primordial alchemy. Our job now as Earth temps, as visitors, as babies greener than goose shit, is to keep that alchemical process of transmutation going, but more importantly, to do so in your own unique and personal way. This is your own individuation process, because the truth will remain subjective whether we admit it or not. But what an honor that is. We get to carry the torch of this never-born light. The sheer magnitude of the most powerful and immense beings in the universe, suns, are subject to our will. The life-bringing gods of all earthly creation, the force of nature we utterly depend on, bows to us, so long as our heart is beating to its drum. The life of all flesh is electric. The life of mind is the spark. Both are simply light. And until the sun sets and the moon sheds its skin, we get to pick how it is alchemized. It is up to us as to how we let it shine.
ship to the sacred slab.